Hello, our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to shed light on the latest concerning the preparations for the COP27, which will be taking place next November in the Red Sea Resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. And indeed, the Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry is in New York, where he is tackling the issue on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, which will be taking place in New York. And we will be taking this report. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, the President designate of the upcoming United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP27, said that the loss and damage from the climate change is a principal issue on the global climate action agenda. Therefore, the minister added that this issue must be addressed carefully during the COP27 that is set to be held in Sharm el-Sheikh. Shoukry also was speaking during a high-level meeting of the group of 77, G77, held on the fringes of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly to discuss the loss and damage arising from climate change.
Foreign Minister and President-designate for the 27th UN Climate Change Conference, COP27, affirmed that the loss and damage from climate change is a principal issue on the conference agenda. Shoukry made his remarks on Monday in New York during a high-level meeting with the Group of 77 and China, G77, titled Loss and Damage, New and Additional Financing. The meeting was moderated by the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, the current chair of the group. It was attended by representatives from the European Union, Germany, South Africa, China, and United Arab Emirates. According to the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, the group officially proposed including discussions on loss and damage finance on the agenda of COP27, which is set to be held in the Red Sea resort city of Sharm el-Sheikh. The Foreign Minister noted that Egypt, as the host of COP27, held unofficial consultations for convergence of relevant views among the parties concerned. Shoukry added that he was looking forward to an active engagement from all climate change stakeholders, including the G77 and China, in dealing with the loss and damage caused by climate change in a way that helps COP27 come up with positive results. Hopes are pinned on COP27 to turn climate-related pledges into action to help facilitate the transition to green energy in order to reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to climate change as per the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, adopted at COP21 and signed by over 190 states, including Egypt, came into effect in 2016 with the aim of limiting the rise in temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Egypt is a member of the G77 and China, which is one of the main negotiating blocs in the UN for developing countries to work on boosting their economic and development interests.
And to shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Hassan Tolba Aboelnga, the international expert in water security and sustainable development and researcher at the Technical University of Cologne, Germany. Dr. Hassan, good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being our guest, sir. Foreign Minister Shoukry presided over, he is, of course, the president-designate of the 27th UN Conference on the Climate Change, the COP27, is actually now in New York to participate in a high-level meeting with the group of 77, China, and entitled Loss and Damage, New and Additional Financing. Can you shed more light about this very important event ahead of the COP27, which will be taking place in Egypt?
Yeah, so actually the push for loss and damage funding that we are calling for it in this talks today is really coming from a powerful grouping of nations at the COP. It's called the G77. They are representing 130 nations and almost 80% of the world population. Yeah. And they are calling for compensating all these developing countries for the loss and damage that's coming from the climate impacts of extremes, like floods and droughts. And actually, the G77 and the China last year were deeply disappointed from the COP26 in Glasgow that the loss and damage facility proposal was actually rejected by developed countries. And to explain it more to our audience, so if you had your house burned by fires or destroyed by floods or sea level rise, the proposal that comes from the developed countries says that they wanted was only going to pay for the experts to assess the damage, but not to pay you to rebuild your house. And actually, for each COP, you would find two main questions that haven't so far been addressed. First, about should the loss and damage mechanism constitute a third pillar in addition to adaptation and mitigation. We know now that the UN Convention on Climate Change is mainly based on two main pillars, adaptation and mitigation, and the crucial point of loss and damage is still also not well addressed or committed by developed countries. And the second pillar is mainly about should the loss and damage mechanism include a compensation for economic losses, rehabilitation of damages, or even reparations for non-economic losses. So the impact of climate change, we have seen it today, and there is a need from developing countries to be compensated from the impacts of climate change that we have been facing today.
Indeed. Sir, the UN climate change high-level champion for Egypt, Mahmoud Mohiuddin, actually has urged pushing forward the climate action agenda in Africa by increasing the climate-related projects and investments. What's your take on that?
So Africa is known with all reports and research that Africa is really a hotspot. So when it comes to the climate impacts, we have seen the extremes from floods or droughts, which is really hits Africa and especially the vulnerable people and the poor people, leading to really negative impacts on water security, food security, and even leading to conflicts in some areas. And what is really coming from the Africa, from the greenhouse gas emissions, they are only contributing to 3.8% to the global greenhouse gas emissions. But they are really very vulnerable continent when it comes to the impact, and they are suffering for sure from the loss and damage. And actually, this is also Dr. Mahmoud Mohiuddin was also calling in the last conference in that also happened in Africa. It also they are calling for he was calling for 5 priorities in which climate action should be based. First, mainly about to adopt a holistic approach when addressing the climate change. Second is mainly starting this year, COP really must shift from the pledges and the promises to more implementation. So implementation will be the key part of the COP27. And the third is mainly climate region. It's not only about Egypt, but also about Africa, about Arab region, and all developing economies that we have also been facing the impacts of climate change. And the fourth is mainly about climate change has to be localized, because the impacts that we have seen, you see it, farmers are seeing the impacts of climate change, people themselves, they are seeing the impact. And finally, all this wouldn't be really possible without the finance for climate change and mobilizing this finance to this developing countries. So these are the 5 priorities, and then this is a really a collective action that we need to make, all countries have to make, and especially for developed countries to commit to climate change, because the challenges that we face today is really threatening our economies and even our livelihood.
Sir, according to experts, Africa remains the continent the most vulnerable to the climate change's effect, despite the low contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions. Africa actually produces no more than 3% of the world's total. How do you see that?
So, as I said, they are really, they don't like the major emitters of the greenhouse gas emission, but the impact is, you can feel it there.
Yes,
but
indeed.
also, there are many impacts that we see, or even the current status of Africa is not also so well. So when it comes to the health care, most African countries really need to spend up to 5 times on adaptation to climate change. You would find this many challenges around climate change to food security, also water insecurity, and also conflict that has been also rising also in Africa. For instance, in the latest Chad region, you would find that the temperature has really risen nearly to 2 degrees since the 1960s. And extreme weather events from flooding and drought, all this affecting 40 million people. And this for sure has really contributed to lower fishing, agriculture and livestock yields, and the loss also of the culture due to for sure displacement of the communities. And one of the major also impacts that we see, why we really focus in Africa, is mainly because immigration and the climate change would really put a great pressure on the whole world, especially in us in Egypt and also in Europe.
Yes. Sir, what is the importance here of adopting a climate action-oriented path that can deliver on both the African development and the climate goals as well?
So, if you see from all this challenge that we have seen today from climate change, and also all the talks and the negotiations of climate change, we would find that we are off track.
Yes.
To really to meet the Paris Agreement on climate change, to limit the greenhouse gas emissions, and also when it comes also to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, which also we have the SDG 13 on climate change that call also all countries to commit to climate change and to build resilient infrastructure and societies to cope with the challenges of climate change. So for that, when I mean by new paradigm, is mainly to change the way we deal with climate change today and rethink climate change in our also priorities and put it in front of our agenda for all countries. The second, mainly to change the way we finance the climate, because as I say, the status quo is not enough, and we need really need not only official development assistance. Countries also and the government has also to play a great role in order to plan and budget their public resources more efficiently, and also increasing their performance and the governance, and focus mainly on adaptation measures, and leverage their public funds, which is really also not enough to attract commercial finance. And this is really need a new changes in our strategy. Last but not least, it's mainly about also exchanging the way we collaborate with each other. And cooperation, climate change is a global issue, and we need collective actions from all countries.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Hassan Tolba Aboelnga, international expert in water security and sustainable development. Always a pleasure to listen to your precious input, Doctor. And our dear viewers will go to a short break, and after that we'll be back to continue in Africa Today. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
نحن لدينا مصير مشترك.
مصر تسلمت الرئاسة الدورية للاتحاد الإفريقي لعام 2019 وتتطلع كعادتها دوما للتعبير عن شواغل الشعوب الإفريقية الشقيقة الرامية لتحقيق الاستقرار والتقدم ودفع عجلة التنمية قدما. إذا كنتم ترغبون في تغيير وجه القارة الأفريقية، فالاتحاد الأفريقي كقيادة تستطيع أن تعمل وتدرس بشكل مركزي لمشروع عملاق لبناء بنية أساسية على مستوى القارة. أنا أتصور أن الأمن والاستقرار استثمار. إذا لم تستقر هذه القارة والأمن فيها بمعدلاته عالية، هذا الأمر سينعكس بالسلب علينا كلنا.
Welcome back. UN investigators said that they believed Ethiopia's government was behind the ongoing crimes against humanity in Tigray. The experts voiced alarm at the findings, which they said reflect profound polarization and hatred along the ethnic lines in Ethiopia. In this report, due to be presented to the Rights Council on the 22nd of September, they made a number of recommendations, including that all parties to the conflict immediately cease hostilities and violations, including those that might amount to war crimes or crimes against humanity.
UN investigators said they believed Ethiopia's government was behind ongoing crimes against humanity in Tigray and warned the resumption of the conflict there increased the risk of further atrocity crimes. In its first report, the Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia said it had found evidence of widespread violations by all sides since fighting erupted in the Tigray region in November 2020. The commission, created by the UN Human Rights Council last December and made up of 3 independent rights experts, said it had reasonable grounds to believe that, in several instances, these violations amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The experts listed a long line of horrific violations, from killings to international starvation and rape and sexual violence perpetrated on a staggering scale. And they highlighted in particular the situation in Tigray, where the government and its allies have denied around 6 million people access to basic services, including the internet and banking, for more than a year. Severe restrictions on humanitarian access have left 90% of the region's population in dire need of assistance. The report said there were reasonable grounds to believe that the federal government and allied regional state governments have committed and continue to commit the crimes against humanity of persecution on ethnic grounds and other inhumane acts. The report said that they were intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health based on their ongoing denial and obstruction of humanitarian assistance to Tigray.
An entrepreneur in Ivory Coast has created the country's first locally made smartphone, which aims to improve the accessibility with voice commands in local languages, that is for the users who can't read and write. The phone went on sale last month in the West African country. It can understand commands and respond in 16 of Ivory Coast's approximately 60 spoken languages.
A new mobile phone designed and assembled in Ivory Coast is helping illiterate users to overcome difficulties. Thanks to a voice control system, users can now access information in 50 African languages. Official numbers suggest that in Ivory Coast, 40% of people are illiterate. For the older generation, the new voice-activated assistant is a powerful tool. The smartphone uses an operating system unique to the company and covers 17 languages spoken in Ivory Coast. The founder of the company behind the new phone claims this is a response to the frustration illiterate users feel with the technology currently on offer. The company hopes to incorporate 1,000 African languages and reach almost 1 billion people in the future. In exchange for government tax breaks, the company is to pay 3.5% of its income to the state and train around 1,200 young people each year.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of our program Africa Today, where we have been tackling the most important points that the COP27 would be tackling, as the world concern is the climate change, and we are hosting the COP27 in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh in the coming months of November. Our dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of this edition. Till tomorrow with another cruise. Goodbye, many thanks for watching.